This year marks the fourth year that the women's team from Team USA has been in existence. And this year is also the first year that the World Championships are going to be held in the US of A. Today you're going to get a glimpse of what fishing Stillwaters is all about in the competition arena. And by the end of this, you're going to have a step-by-step guide to fishing a new Stillwater this year. Hey, I'm Dave, host of the Traveled Podcast. I've been fly fishing since I was a little kid. I grew up around a little fly shop and created one of the largest fly fishing podcasts out there. I've also interviewed more of the competition Team USA anglers than just about anyone out there. Melissa Smith, president of the Women's Team USA and Stillwater Master, is going to give us her best tips on how to have success this year, even if you're in a new area. You're going to find out how to do research on a lake, what you should be thinking about, what factors also are most important to be really digging into. Then once you're on the lake, we're going to talk about the techniques that are going to allow you to find the most fish and how to adjust on changes that occur and how to get systematic. We talked about being systematic. Plus, we're going to get her top 3 most important factors in fishing Stillwaters and what leader setup you should use, even if you're brand new to Stillwaters right now. This episode of Traveled is presented by Yellowstone Teton Territory, where you can explore great fishing, great hunting, the World Championships this year, and you can just get out and explore some great part of the country and the U.S. West. The big event is even closer. Hope you have plans. Here she is, Melissa Smith. How you doing, Melissa?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you putting some time today to dig into a few topics that we've been working on here in recent episodes. Part of it is today's going to be Team USA. I think we're going to talk about that. This year, they're actually going to be in the U.S., so over in eastern Idaho. We've had a few episodes where we've talked about that, some of the youth stuff. So I think the women's and youth, we'll talk about that today. You're also in a hot spot for fly fishing, Colorado. You've got a good background. I think your husband has maybe some good influence on you, so we'll talk about that. But yeah, I just want to check in. How are things going today? What are you up to now? We're in kind of almost April as we're talking here. What's going on these days?
Yeah, things are starting to thaw, which is great. So we've been able to get out fishing here and there, more in the Denver area, which has been great down in the Deckers. And so just kind of dusting off the old reels and rods and getting out and fishing.
Yeah. Do you what's your, when it's windy or when it's cold and you're frozen, no fishing, what are you doing during the off season?
So we ski a lot. We live up in Blackhawk, and so we're right in the middle of all the ski resorts, which has been great. So
yeah, skiing. I feel like that's one of those outdoor sports in the winter. Maybe it's the number one. I know Brian Niska on our In the Bucket podcast talks a lot about the overlap between skiing and fly fishing, and you know what I mean? It seems like, I guess, anything outdoors, right? We're all kind of into all that stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, winter fishing's tough. It'll take a number on your confidence.
Yeah.
So sometimes skiing's a good break.
That's right. Yeah. And the older you get, the harder that becomes to love the cold, the abuse, I guess is what you'd call it. But
Yeah.
we'll leave that for the younger kids out there. But what does it look like for you? I want to hear about Team USA because this is pretty exciting. I think the women's program has been going for a while now. But is this the first time it's been in the U.S., the World Championship?
It is for the women's team. Yeah. So we're excited to be hosting. It'll be our first championship. It's actually the 4th championship for the women's team, for the women's organization, if you will. So it'll be in Island Park. That'll be exciting. It's going to be an incredible event. We're going to be hosting on venues like the Henry's Fork River and the Hebgen Lake. And so there will be 7 teams from around the globe here. So we'll be the host country. We're thrilled to share some of our most cherished fishing spots and welcome anglers from all over the world.
Yeah, so it's going to be the Henry's Fork, Hebgen. Do you know the program right now as you look at it? Do you kind of know exactly where you're fishing? Are you starting to think about, what does that look like? Are you starting to think about getting over there and kind of checking things out?
Yeah, in the next couple of months. Everything's still frozen over there, but okay. In the next couple of months, yeah.
Okay, and then as a reminder, when does that all start? Do you have all the dates? When is the opening ceremony? When do you start fishing?
So the 13th is the opening ceremony, and we start fishing on the 14th to I think the closing ceremony is on the 18th.
And that's of July, right?
Of July,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. And what do you expect this one? So you had 4 years now. How has that been? Have you been there for all 4 years, or talk about that a little bit?
So the first year was in Norway. I wasn't at that one, but I have been at the next two. So the first year in Norway, they took fourth place. The next one was in British Columbia. That one was mainly a lake competition, and that was my first one. And that's my specialty is lakes. And so while we were there, we took bronze medal, and it was an incredible opportunity. That was a really cool championship. So in British Columbia, and then that was in 2023. In 2024, last year, we were in the Czech Republic. Incredible country. We had the best food. And I would love to go back just to fish again. But we were there with the Masters team. My husband's on the Masters team, so we were able to fish at the same time. But it was just a really cool experience, and we took fourth place there.
Okay. So you've been right up there. I mean, since the beginning, you're up there almost, in the medaling, right? What do you attribute that to? You're brand new to the scene. There must be other women's teams out there that have been doing this for a while. What is the history of the women's program? Has it been out there for a while worldwide?
We started in 2022. So brand new. Our women's team is new. I would say a lot of the women's teams are new-ish, but some of them, like the Czech team, have been around for quite a long period of time. Same with a lot of them in like England and all of those teams have been around for quite a long time. They have been competing. And so for our team to start up just recently and to be competing at the level we are, it's been incredible. We have a really, really strong group of women. And so we just work really well together. It's all about communicating and just supporting each other along the way.
Nice. And who are on the women's team? How many people are there total?
On the team, for the world's team, there's 5 competing anglers, and then there's 1 reserve that we have. But on the national team, we have 12.
Yeah, 12. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
And those people are spread kind of throughout the U.S., all over the country. Do you fish with them regularly? How does that work? Or do you kind of meet up at just the national champion? How does that work regionally?
Yeah. So, well, we just, our national team was just announced in September. And so I'm lucky because here in Colorado, there's 4 of us. And so we have the opportunity of getting together. We live fairly close to each other, so we're able to get together pretty frequently. There's a few folks, I think there's 3 in the Montana area. So they're able to get together with Oklahoma, North Carolina. They're just all over the country. And so the idea is we'll get together often. We do have calls frequently, so we're able to share ideas. We just started an internal intranet so we can share ideas, best practices, and just start bonding together. So,
Nice.
Yeah.
So you mentioned lakes is kind of your specialty. Is that just something that, you had some background in? What do you love about the lake fishing?
Yeah. So lock style fishing, without a doubt, one of my favorite competition formats. So what I really love about it is especially this competition lake style. I'll break it down for you because it's really a unique way of fishing. So it's all done from a drifting boat. So unlike anchored fishing where you're stationary, the boat is constantly in motion, where that makes it exciting. So we use a drogue, which is a windsock. It trails behind the boat and it slows the drift and keeps things under control. So you have 2 anglers fishing at the same time, one from the bow and one from the stern. And each of us gets our own half of the boat to work from. So it's fair game. You have 3 hours to fish when you're in a competition setting. And then every single detail matters because you're gaining points for the number of fish that you catch and the size. And so there's a lot of strategy in that. You're thinking about everything: the precision of your cast, where your flies are sitting in the water column, how you're retrieving. Every environmental factor kicks in, like the wind, the sun, the cloud cover, or the weather. And then there's the added challenge of paying attention to what your competitor is doing right next to you. So it's as much about focus and adaptation as it is about skill. So I love this because it's not just about catching fish. It's about being fully in the moment. You're constantly adjusting, reading the water, refining your technique. It's just so engaging.
Wow. Yeah, we've heard a little bit on the lock style over the years. I think Devin and Phil Roy did an episode on the littoral zone where they talked a little bit about that, and we've kind of briefly chatted on it, but hadn't gone deep on it. Do you know the history of the lock style? Is that something like why is that and that's the only thing you can do in competitive fishing, right? It sounds like. Do you know why that is, and do you know much of that history?
Actually, I don't know the history of the lock style. Yeah, I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Well, I can. We'll do a little research. Actually, I'm trying to think who would be the best person. There must be some anglers out there that have. Did you know many? I mean, when it comes to lock style, how does that work on the lake? When you're let's take it to the BC event when you guys were up there. How did that
Yeah.
work? Did you choose somebody to fit, or do all five of the competitors fish the lock style throughout the event?
Yeah, so we all do all at once. And so you'll have each of the teams. So you'll have 5 boats on the water all at once. I do know, actually, I was sitting in the boat with one of the ladies from Scotland, and she did mention that there were routes from Scotland and Ireland, that it had something about the top of the water technique. And that's all I remember. It had something about casting multiple flies, about a team of flies from a drifting boat. But yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, we'll put a couple links in the show notes. I'm looking at some stuff now here back on in the UK. So yeah, we'll get a little bit of information there on that. But so well, let's take it to so you have let's take it to the water, like, and say we're not even competition. I mean, do you think this is a technique that people should be implementing if they're just out there fishing on lakes? Do you find that's something more common these days?
Um, Using a drogue and lock style fishing.
Yeah, do you find people are doing this out just recreationally, not just competitive fishing out there?
Not so much, but I think it's a great way of covering water and keeping your, boat moving and covering water. When you're just stationary, yeah, you can catch fish and, there's something to that. I see a lot of people fishing that way with an indicator and, catching fish that way, but there is something about keeping your boat moving and covering water to be able to catch fish. And there's so much more technique and a lot that goes into that when you're on a lake.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's take it to I want to take it to the events coming up because it's right around the corner. I mean, it's April, May, June, July, just a few months, really. That time is coming quick. Do you feel at all, nervous? Does this feel like something you're all ready for? How does that look as far as the event?
We're all getting prepared for it. I wouldn't say we're nervous for it, but there's a lot of preparation that goes into it. A lot of strategy, a lot of practice, and a lot of mental focus. So we just had a team practice last night to talk about one of the venues and sharing ideas and techniques and getting familiar with that particular venue. What do we know? And so I think there's just a lot of preparation that goes into the championships.
How did what does that look like? Team practice? Is this something where you're hopping on a Zoom call? Walk us through that. Is this something where it's like 30 minutes on a call, or are you talking like hours and hours of you guys with the team practice?
Yeah, so it'll be multiple Zoom calls, one for each venue. Sometimes it is just tying together as well. And so we'll do about an hour call for each venue. And then we'll get together and we'll just tie together. We will get together in advance of the championships and actually fish together as well. And so that's a huge part of the preparation. So it's a whole mix of strategy, practice, and mental focus.
Gotcha. So when you on this Zoom call, let's just take it to the last one. Which were you talking about, Henry's, or which area were you covering?
Sheridan.
Oh, Sheridan. Yeah, perfect. Yes, Sheridan. We actually had, I think, last year. We might even be going back in this next year. But Sheridan Lake's cool because it's a private lake there. What did that look like on the call? I'm just trying to get to that point. Like, how does somebody prepare for a new lake? How do you prepare? You guys are in a championship. What tips can somebody get if they're getting ready for a new water? You know what I mean? Like, what did you guys talk about? Or is it more you're just kind of chatting, kind of like, I'm just trying to get to that. What do you get out of those meetings on the Zoom calls?
So when we talk about each of those new lakes, it's about gathering knowledge, planning carefully, and being adaptable. So we did a lot of research on the lake. So we talked about the landscape, doing the fish species, the type of feeding behavior, water temperatures, common fly patterns. that are used there. And then we check for any reports, current conditions, or hatches that happen different times of the year. We map it out, understand the layout of the lake. That's really crucial. So study maps to identify key areas such as drop-offs or weed beds, inflows, things like that. And then also look at the weather forecast to anticipate how wind or sun might impact the fishing at different times of the year. And so, then we talk about different casts and retrieves. What would you do if the weather happened in this type, or those kinds of things? And so we chat about what have you done and what has worked best for you, and how would you adjust for these types of factors if you were sitting in this portion of the lake.
Yep. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, that's exactly. So you guys just basically take a deep dive, and then when everybody comes together, you probably all have your specialties and you're providing different feedback. I mean, the cool thing about, I think, what we have going is you've got, the youth team, you've got the women's, you've got the 2 levels of the men's. Is there some form of, I guess you have a benefit because Chris, right, your husband is he still in the, in competing?
He is. He's actually the president of the Masters team.
Yeah, perfect. And the Masters, I can't get this through my head. The Masters is the younger of the men. Which one's there's not the seniors, he is the older.
Yeah, he's the older.
It's confusing because I think of the golf. I think of golf as the opposite, right? But seniors are actually the
younger.
The younger, yeah. Seniors are the younger, the Masters are the older. So he's in it with that crew, which is awesome. Pete Erickson, right? And all those guys that have already been through this for a while.
Yes.
So is that something you can? Yeah, I mean that must be pretty amazing having a resource like Chris to, if you have something pops up and you're unsure, you can just check in with him, right? Has that been a big factor on your success?
Honestly, I think that's like the biggest factor. That's probably the best thing that's made me a good angler. It comes down to, well, the first thing is time on the water, but I think the biggest factor is the support system. So I'm incredibly fortunate to have Chris, my husband, as my fishing partner and my partner in life. So he is my fishing buddy, somebody that I can go out and go fishing with any day. It's funny because when we first started, I didn't want to go fishing and I didn't want to be the one to like this. Right. So I didn't start fishing until, maybe 2017, 2018. And I just went out because he just kept escaping every weekend, and we have really stressful jobs. And, I was like, just take me out there. And we went out and he put me on fish immediately. And because he used to be the coach for the youth team.
Oh, yeah.
And so, 15, 20 fish later, we went home and I was like, oh, that was kind of cool. So we went out again and again. And I didn't realize that was like a lot of fish until we started talking to people. And I was like, oh, you only caught 2 fish?
Right.
And so it was actually really cool. So having him be my mentor, my teacher, has just been incredible.
Yeah, that is incredible. So that's obviously been huge, and then you can share, right, your wisdom now with everybody else through the team. But that's great. I love how you broke down a lot of the stuff you just rattled off there about species, temperature, all these things. If you had to put that in a nutshell, as far as the research you do preparing for a new river, a new lake, is that something where you have, your spreadsheet, you have all these checklists, or is it just in your head when you think about this stuff? Are you kind of more, how's your brain work? Are you more like, I'm more of a list person. I would have this thing as a list, but how do you do it?
Yeah, I actually do have a list, but it just depends on what you're doing. So in a lake, I'm very much a linear list person in my head.
Yeah, in your head. Yeah. So you got it all in your head. Yeah.
But yeah, do a lot of research, mapping, gear, weather conditions, all of those things.
Okay, so when you look at, let's just take it to Sharon. You guys talked about Sharon. You've got species. You mentioned everything. Let's just start there on that, just real quick. We'll go down this road. So on species, do you know exactly what species are in the lake, whether it's hatchery versus wild, all that stuff?
We do. I'm not going to share it, though.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because there's other people that could be listening. There's other. Yes. So we'll just walk through it. So there's species, there's temperatures. You mentioned looking at other reports. Reports could be like anything, right? Just search for fishing reports, go to the local fly shops, all that stuff. Hatches, another big part on lakes. Do you feel like with the, with the drogue fishing on the lake, that I guess hatches, obviously, even if they're not on the surface, fish could still be hatching. Talk about that a little bit. How do the hatches work on these lakes? Are you fishing dries, or is this mostly below the surface?
It can be a combo of both. It just depends on, like I said, the weather and the hatches. And so I'm not going to give out too much.
Yeah, okay. We don't want to get all your secrets out, so let's maybe not talk specifically about Sheridan because obviously you guys are getting ready for this event. Let's talk more like Fly Fishing 101. Let's just
Yeah,
go
yeah.
high level on this. This will be easier because we won't have to worry about any of any competition issues here. So let's say we've got a brand new angler right now. They just came into fly fishing. They heard about it, and they're like, "Whoa, this looks pretty cool. I don't know quite what this is about." What would you tell that person? They're brand new. They want to like learn about it, get into it. What are the steps you would tell them to help them kind of get started?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is kind of gear up. Start with the basics. You'll need, a basic rod and reel, fly line leader, tippet flies, just the basic gear. A 9'5" weight is pretty versatile for most, if we're talking about lakes.
Yeah, let's keep it on lake. We'll keep it real high level. We'll just say, let's say this is a fly fishing 101 for lake. So you need the gear. So fly rod, reel, that's the
Yep.
start. You got to get the gear.
Study the lake. So even before you make any cast, I think it's a really good time to observe where you're going to fish. So I always look for areas with structure, like drop offs, weed beds, or inflows. Those will attract fish. You're going to look at water clarity and depth. So clear water will require lighter presentations, while deeper areas will need a sinking line or weighted flies. You'll look for fish activity. If you see surface rises or swirls or any signs of movement or birds diving, that can indicate where some action is. Casting, if you're new to fly casting, I would start with some very simple techniques. Practice basic overhead cast to get some smooth, controlled presentation on lakes. You don't really need to cast far. It's just accurate. Just be really accuracy over distance. So on lakes, presentation matters. So you'll cast out and let your flies settle. Experiment with your retrieve. That's really important. So short, jerky strips mimic bait fish. So like tick, tick, tick type of jerky strips. And then if you do slow, steady strips, those are better for nymphs or chironomids.
Gotcha.
If you vary the depth of your fly, that's important as well. Finding the fish is the hardest part. So you can do that by counting down, count seconds after your cast for your retrieve. That'll help you cover the water column to find out where the fish are.
There you go. Yeah, those are some awesome tips. On the rod, the 9'5" weight, that's always kind of been the standard all around rod. Do you think there's any is that what you use, or do you find that there's a benefit of going shorter or smaller, and then weight wise difference going lighter or shorter? Or do you think the 9'5" all around is kind of the best one?
That's good all around. I use a 10'7". I like a 7 weight. It's easier in the wind. My husband uses a 10'6" weight. It's easier to cast. You can get a lot more distance with that. So it just depends on your personal preference. Some good lines. I always would have an intermediate sinking line, a good floating line, and maybe a type 3 or type 4. So you have a good, variation of lines. So yeah.
Yeah. So 10-foot, and the benefit of the 10-foot is that it's kind of a longer lever. It allows you to do more things. Why do you think the 10-foot for you? Do you like that over, say, the 9 or 9.5?
I like the additional reach that you get. It allows you to cover more water without moving your position. So it helps you when you're in a drifting boat. It helps you have better control of your line and fly over greater distance. And then it gives you a little better line control, in my opinion. So if you have techniques like nymphing or just that additional length makes it easier to lift more line off the water.
Okay, great. And when you're fishing on lakes, if it's not competition, are you doing kind of all sorts of techniques other than using the drogue? Are you anchored up, doing kind of everything?
No, we don't really use anchors.
Yeah. So it's pretty much you're using the drogue. If you're out there on Stillwaters, if even non-competition, you're fishing with the drogue?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yep. Gotcha. And then part of that is obviously you're probably preparing for competitions, but also I'm guessing it's pretty effective. Do you think, like, let's just say, we've talked a lot about kind of anchored up, Stillwater, cron mids, kind of indicators, all that stuff too. Do you feel like the drogue is as effective, more effective than some of those other techniques?
Yeah, it allows the boat to drift naturally with the wind, so creates motion that's ideal for fishing. When you anchor the boat and you stay stationary, it can limit the dynamic presentation of the flies. So the steady movement provided by the drogue helps mimic the lifelike movement of the insects or the bait fish,
Mm-hmm.
increasing your chances of attracting fish.
Yep.
I think it also allows you to cover more water rather than anchoring. So you're limiting the area you can fish when you're anchored. A drogue allows you to fish across a larger area of the lake. So if fish are feeding, when you think about how fish are in water, they don't just sit, especially in a lake, they don't just sit in the same spot. They're always cruising and going around and looking. Yeah. So it allows you to explore different depths and spots without constantly repositioning yourself.
Yeah, I love this. No, I think, yeah, it sounds like it's more engaging, and I always think of the old school back when I started Stillwater fishing and lakes and stuff. It was like trolling was a good way to find fish, and
Mhm.
it seems like that's just kind of an old school, like it's similar to this, but totally different. The difference is trolling, you're kind of going over your water before you even hit it in some ways, depending on how you cast. But yeah, what do you think about that? Is trolling still something that people are doing out there, or is that just a method that's maybe low on the list for Stillwaters?
I see people trolling all the time and I see them catching fish. It's wild. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, people are doing it. We do it when we're, I'll be rowing and I'll see my husband trolling behind us.
Yep.
So yeah, it happens
Yeah, throw it out. I mean, that's one way you could do it, especially I could think you're in a boat. You could just throw your thing out there while you're getting to another spot. I mean, definitely picked up lots of fish doing that, right?
for sure.
Yeah. So, and then the drogue, but the cool thing is with the drogue is you're drifting, you're getting a more natural drift, so you can actually fish, ahead of the drift, right? So these fish aren't seeing the boat you're casting before. Is that kind of maybe break that down? How does that work as you're drifting? How are you casting? Let's just say, I guess you could take it to competition or just in general, if somebody was out there with a drogue, how would they? Are they always casting in front of the boat before the boat hits that area?
Yeah. So you're always casting downwind. So you're going to cast in the direction of the boat's drift, which is typically downwind. So you make sure that your flies land ahead of the boat. So you're maintaining a natural presentation as you drift towards them. It keeps your line under control as you're casting against the wind. So,
Yeah. So you're going with the wind. Um, yeah, so the wind's blowing. Yeah, I'm trying to get this now. So the drogue's out there behind you. The wind's
behind,
coming, blowing you down away from the drogue, right? And then you're
yes,
casting down, kind of. The wind's at your back, so it's easy to cast. You're making the cast is
correct.
easy. Is that the case?
Yes, exactly. Yes. And then you'll work a fly pattern, a fan pattern. I apologize. So you'll
Yeah.
cover the water systematically. You'll cast in a fan shape. You'll start at one side, for example, like 10 o'clock, and you'll make a succession of casts to the other side to 2 o'clock. So you'll make sure that you cover as much water as possible as the boat drifts.
Gotcha. And then how slow or fast is the boat drifting in? Can you control that, or is it all dependent on the wind? And is there a limit? Like, what if there's like white caps out there? Could you still do this method?
I mean, it's all dependent on the wind. And yes, you can do it. You really don't want to be out in a drift boat with whitecaps
No.
because,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's not high sides on a boat, on a drift
No.
boat.
Yeah. I guess. What is the boat you guys are? What is your typical boat? Is the boat you use in competition the same boat you use just out fishing? And what is that boat?
Yeah, so we just use it's a small little drift boat. What do we use? We use a adipose.
Oh, so like a skiff with low sides. Like, is that?
Yes.
Yeah. Gotcha. So that's your boat. So you don't have a special like lake boat sort of thing. This is actually like a drift boat with oars, or I guess depending on the situation, is that typically what you're doing?
That's exactly right.
Yeah, gotcha. What do you do when you're fishing big lakes that require, you to motor around to, the other end of the lake if it's a bigger lake?
Like at Hepkin,
Is that pretty big?
yeah, it's a really big lake. So with some of those, we do use a thwart board. And so we're able to sit up on this board. So we're positioning ourselves higher up on the sides and we're able to cast out that way. Well, you still use a drogue, so you'll motor yourself out where you need to, and then you'll cast out the same way. You'll still use a drogue.
Yeah, you still use a drug. Okay, and so you do have like a motor on these skiffs. Is this a like an outboard motor, or what are you putting on the skiffs to get around?
No, we'll actually use if on those larger lakes, we'll use a motorboat.
Oh, gotcha.
That's a good size for those lakes.
Yeah, yeah, gotcha. Okay, yeah, depending. All right. So, but that's the same technique is going to be used. The drogue's out. It's, you're the wind's blowing you. You're fishing. You're fly at with a fan like, casting. Once you cast, what are you typically fishing? What are the flies? Are you fishing, bigger streamers, chironomids, nymphs, a little bit of everything?
Yeah, a little bit of everything. Streamers, damsels, really everything. Junk flies, everything.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So getting back to that person who's kind of brand new, they're thinking, okay, I'm at this lake, this giant lake. I'm out here fishing. Okay, maybe they did some research. They found some drop offs. Maybe there's a spring or something. They're fishing around. How do they know what to use? Like there's chironomids, there's all these bugs. How do they know what bug does that first fly to put on?
Yeah, so to get started, mm, chironomids are small. It's really just to look at like what's happening out there. So a really good, easy one that everybody starts with is a woolly bugger. They're versatile streamers. They're effective in almost any lake. They imitate bait fish, leeches, or larger insects. So black, olive, brown, those are great for beginners.
Mm-hmm.
And those are great to retrieve with varied strips to mimic like a swimming motion. Damselflies or damselfly nymphs are long, slender patterns. Those are great in late spring and summer. Those are great near weed beds. So if you find yourself near a weed bed where damselfly nymphs are often found, those are good with a really slow retrieve with occasional pauses. Those are good. If you are chironomids, those are small
Yeah.
flies that imitate the larva and pupal stages of midges. That's a major food source for lake trout. And so black, red, or olive with a bead head. And I would normally fish those under um, a dry or something like that, or suspend them in some way. That's usually how those are fished. And then pheasant tail nymphs or hare's ear nymphs, those are great classic patterns. Those imitate a variety of insects. Those are great for subsurface fishing as well, on a sinking line.
Yep.
And then dries. Those are great if you see trout rising.
Yeah. If you do see fish rising on the surface, then you can try to match the hatch even on lakes. Is that the case?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Good parachute Adams or an Nile caddis. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so there's a good little rundown of some, top main flies that you can get started with. So if you take it to that woolly bugger, you mentioned some lines, the dry line, the intermediate type 3. How do you know, again, experimenting, let's say you're on this new lake, there's a drop off here. You're going to start with the woolly bugger because that's an easier one. How do you figure out how to get that down? Do you typically start with an intermediate, or do you start with the type 3, work down, or what would you do? What would somebody new do?
That's a good question. So I always start shallow. Begin fishing near the edges, especially around the weed beds or the drop offs, or areas with underwater structure. Those are the spots that tend to hold more fish. And then you'll experiment with the depth. So lakes with three-dimensional fishing environments. So fish aren't always on the surface. You'll use flies and techniques that let you target different depths. So you'll try a sinking line or a weighted fly to reach deeper zones. So if you're using you can even use a floating line with a weighted fly just to get down to some of those depths. And then really focus on your retrieve. That can make a difference. It'll make or break your success. So you'll experiment with the speed and the rhythm of your retrieve. So try really slow, steady strips for nymphs, or fast, erratic retrieves for streamers. So like tick, 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 or, like a tick, tick pause. You mentioned match the hatch. And so pay attention to what insects or prey fish are in the water. So if you're not sure, start with the woolly buggers or the chironomids. Those almost always work.
Mm.
So I always will start with some sort of a leech pattern or a woolly bugger. And that's a really good place to start.
That's sweet. Yeah, no, I love that because that means that, I'm not too far off. A lot of people listening, right? We can start with the basics, and that's what's great about the woolly. I feel like the woolly bugger, it keeps coming back to that. The pheasant tail also is a popular pattern, but I feel like the woolly bugger is the greatest fly pattern of all time. Do you feel like that's kind of the case?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Woolly bugger, some sort of leech,
Yep.
throw a little flash in there, and you've got it made.
Yeah, you got to make, and that's, and even some of these other patterns, like everything else. I think Phil talks a lot about the balance leech. But I mean, essentially, those are all just woolly buggers. I used to love the mohair leech. The mohair with burgundy mohair leech and stuff with a little flash. But at the end of the day, they're all just woolly buggers, right? I mean, that's kind of the same thing. We're all imitating that, at least with the leeches. Is that the case on most of this stuff?
Yeah, all some sort of variation of it, of a leech or a bully bugger in some sense.
Yeah. Okay. And then you said the other cool thing is you mentioned you're out there, you're new to the lake, you have a woolly bugger. You don't want to be necessarily slow retrieves, although you can mix it up. But these fast, erratic strip stops and being erratic is a good way to do it because you're imitating these bait fish, or maybe talk about that a little bit. I guess you're imitating a lot of stuff, but you're imitating something that's attacking or fleeing, or what are you trying to do with that woolly bugger?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Those bait fish or the small little prey fish in the water. So that's what you're doing is the insects or those fish in the water.
Yeah, okay. And so that makes it good. So you got the bugger, and then to get down the right depth, you could just start even with a dry line, maybe a weighted fly just to get down below the surface, work on that a little bit, and then would you also maybe cast out and then do some counting to let it drop a bit? What's your systematic approach to finding those fish, right? They're at some level in the column, whether that's a foot below or 4 feet below. How do people find those fish?
hmm that's the whole
That's the hard
game.
part.
Yep. And that's my favorite part of it. It's a big puzzle or a mystery. I've loved piecing things together. It's being able to figure out that puzzle. And so casting out and counting is exactly it.
Yeah.
You want to find out where the fish are. And that depth is the most important part. And so you can use the countdown method if you are using a sinking line. So you'll cast it out and then count down. So you'll have to know at what speed your line is sinking. And so if you're using a hover or a type 3, you'll know if it's a 1 inch per second or 3 inches per second at how fast it's sinking. And then you'll start your countdown and then start your retrieve at that point in time. So your erratic retrieves, you'll vary the speed and length of your pulls during that time, and then just keep mixing it up until you finally find the fish.
Yeah, keep doing that. I love we had a recent episode with Gunnar Bramer, and he was talking about more like streamers, but he kept talking about how there's nothing that's set in fly fishing. I think a lot of times we try to set rules of things like you got to use, certain things, certain flies, whatever. But really, he was saying like it's not set, and you should just try stuff out there. Do you find that that's the case with Stillwater? That people, if they're new, there's nothing really set. There's all sorts of ways to catch fish, and people should experiment with things.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the best things about fly fishing in general is that it's full of challenges every single time that you go out. And so what worked today is going to be different tomorrow. We go out and we practice all the time for these competitions, and we'll practice every single day. And then the day of the competition, everything changes. And so everything that you knew, everything you prepared for, and you're like, I have this thing dialed in. I know exactly what's happening. It changes. And so whether it's the clouds, the wind, who knows? Everything is just different. And so it's the game. It's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. And I think that's where the Team USA competitors probably do the best because you all fish on all these different water bodies, waterways, rivers, streams, whatever. And I feel like that's the advantage you have is that you can be ready for that. So if something does change, just like when you're in another country and you're like, okay, you got to be able to switch on the fly. How does that happen? So if you're out there, you're expecting something, you've got your game plan, you know what typically hatches in July, mid-July, all this stuff, and all of a sudden something crazy happens. Maybe, I don't know, it snows or something like that, right? Or something goes wild, the temperatures are maybe really warm. Maybe it's a really hot season and it's super warm. How do you adjust to that? Is that all on the fly? What's your tip there?
We all have our confidence flies.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter what it is, they're always going to work because you have confidence in it. But I would say the biggest thing is mental preparation. Competitions are nerve-wracking. And so everything's going to change. The table's going to flip. Everything is just upside down. and it can be nerve-wracking. And being able to stay calm and focused is critical. And so visualization is what I use. That's the technique I use. So I mentally walk through the casts, the retrieves, and the tactics before the event to build confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of the day, it's all about being able to adapt and adaptability. So every venue, every competition is different. And the anglers who are able to adjust on the fly tend to have the greatest success. So like I said, everything changes the day of. We can strategize all day long. We can tie all of the flies in the world, every pattern, but being able to adjust to the local insects, the water conditions, and the weather on the fly, the people that can do that are the ones that succeed.
That's awesome. And the confidence, I love how you mentioned the visualization and are in visualizing, right? I mean, is that part of that where you're visualizing everything and then even catching of the fish? I feel like this in sports, that's always the analogy, right? Because this is kind of a sport. But the best of the best, I'm sure, are doing that too, right? The LeBron James, Michael Jordans, those people are visualizing what the championship already looks like. Like they've already done it. Is that kind of what you're saying? That are you doing through the whole thing, even of all the way to the catching of the big fish and winning the tournament?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Taking it through to the finish. And if you, if I think of, oh, yeah, I'm catching a fish on this, I don't know, egg, and that's the only thing that I can catch fish on, I'm cooked.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the game's over for me. And if I think that's the only thing that's going to work, but being able to walk through the game top to bottom, getting from point A to point B, it's without my teammates, being able to lean on sometimes. And we all have good days and we all have bad days. And your confidence is shaken from one day to the next, especially if you have one bad session after another. Each one of us have had that time where we're like, dang it, I knew I had this thing and it just fell apart for me. If I can't visualize it for myself, the teammates that I have, we just lean on each other and it is incredible. So having that support system, again, I'll mention it, it just is key to being able to be successful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I want to get back to a little bit on the flies, and we talked about some general categories, maybe some top flies you like just in general. But I wanted to also talk about the event coming up again. So how, is it Island Park? Is that where everybody's heading down for the first night?
Yeah, so we'll be staying in Idaho Falls.
Oh yeah, Idaho Falls. So you'll be in Idaho Falls, and then take us there a little bit. Are you familiar with that area? Have you been there before? Do you know kind of what to expect with that area?
A little bit. My family's from Idaho Falls, so
Oh,
I've
okay.
been there a couple times.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you actually have family still in Idaho Falls?
No, that's where my father's from.
Oh, your grandfather.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Awesome. So you have some family connections there. And let's just walk through that. The event starts, you mentioned July. Let me take it back. I don't have the dates right in front of me, but is it July 17th? That's a Thursday.
July 13th to the 19th are the official days.
Okay, 13th and 19th. So you're probably going to be arriving on what, July 11th, 12th, Friday before, something like that?
Around that time period, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then as far as fishing, you're preparing for this. Are you going to be preparing? I guess that's the one advantage you have, right? Because it's your home country, so you can go out there and fish this as much as possible. Is that how that works? And these other teams that are coming from around the world, they're not able to do that. How does that work? Is that just an advantage of being the home team?
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Everything's frozen, but we'd love to get out there a lot more. We were out there this last year and we were able to fish all of the venues ahead of time. So that was great. Yeah. So we've been out there and we've fished all of these.
And that's probably the same thing when you turn it around to the Czech over there. I'm assuming, didn't go out there and fish, months, years before that. You just kind of went there during your trip and fished for the first time. Is that kind of how that worked into Czech and on that last year that you did it?
Yes. Yeah. We show up about a week before the competition and we fish the week prior and then just go straight into it.
Okay. And so that's exactly what these teams are going to do here as well. But I feel like that just being able to fish it doesn't always mean you're going to win. Just the fact that you all can fish it more than the other countries, right? There's still some other pieces to the pie here, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, everything changes. So what happened last year, this year, there could be a lot of runoff or maybe not so much runoff. The conditions can change year over year.
Perfect. And I'm just looking now. So yeah, so July 13th, and just want to give people a heads up if people are interested in checking out this event, what is the best thing to do? Is to go to the website. If people do, they have to register? Can they just show up to if people wanted to watch this event, wanted to volunteer, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to have more volunteers. If you go to the U.S. Angling site, usangling.org, we are having the youth and the women's at the same time. And so the youth team or the youth championships, there are 9 teams competing. And for the women's championships, we have 7. And so they'll be at the same time. We're looking for a lot of volunteers. The home base is in Idaho Falls. And so we will be having 2 river venues I lied, 3 river venues and 2 lake venues. And so, yeah, come out, see some of the best anglers from around the world. It's incredible.
Yeah. And when the people are out there, how does that work on the watching? Do they come there and just sit on certain river sections, or, is it different depending on where you're at? Do you actually have spectators, or is it, how does that look?
The lakes will be easier. You'll want to bring binoculars so you can see what's going on because the lakes are pretty big. The rivers, there's a little, I don't want to say little, it's a hike to get down to the rivers.
Yeah, so there is some possibility. And then the volunteering, can they do that from, if people want to get involved in that, just checking with usangling.org as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. Well, let's start to kind of take it out of here, like we said, with some of those. Go back to the fly. I always like to get some top patterns, and you mentioned the woolly bugger, a few of kind of the categories. But again, when it comes down to, if you look at these 5 categories you talked about, I guess the streamers, the woolly bugger, that's one category. Is the fly that you would be using literally a woolly bugger, just in general, if somebody was out there? Is that the fly? Just grab a black woolly bugger, just your standard style?
Kind of, yeah. I kind of use a general woolly bugger. I do like for streamers. When it comes to nymphs, I generally love a good pheasant tail nymph. It's a pretty classic pattern, or a hare's ear nymph. For dries, I love a good elk hair caddis.
Oh, elk hair, okay.
Yeah. BWOs, blue wing olives are great, especially this time of year. RS2 for emergers. That's a great mayfly pattern or a soft tackle. And then let's talk about terrestrials. A good ants, a foam ant is a good one. And I love that for the summer fishing near banks. It's funny, you can catch a lot on a chubby as well, a chubby Chernobyl.
Okay.
Every once in a while, we'll throw that on. And then for the lakes, I've been getting into a lot of damsels or some booby flies.
Yeah.
Those are great buoyant flies if you're going to use them on a sinking line. And so, yeah, those are really good ones. You mentioned match the hatch. That's a really good advice. A lot of people talk about that, resembling, choose patterns that resemble the insects that are present in your environment. So just be really observant. Observe the water. That can give you a lot of clues on what to use. Cover a lot of different layers. Keep flies that are targeting the surface, mid-depth, and the deeper zones to cover the water column. And don't be afraid to experiment. Try a lot of different patterns until you find out what the fish are responding to. Olive, black, those 2 are great colors, depending on the time of the year, and that'll set you up for success.
Okay, and what would be, if you had to say again, that person that's kind of new to the lakes, they're out there, we've now got them there, they've got their rod, they've got some fly patterns, their lines. What are 2 or 3 tips you're giving them for that day to say, okay, you're going to be out here, think about this when you're fishing Stillwaters? What would you tell them?
Yeah, experiment with your retrieval speeds.
Yeah, retrievals. That's number 1.
Yeah, fish respond to slow, steady retrieves, while other times they prefer fast, erratic movements. So mix things up to mimic different prey like baitfish, nymphs, or leeches.
Okay.
So for beginners, short strips and pauses are a good way to start. Cover the water thoroughly. So work systematically to cover as much water as possible. So cast in a fan-like pattern. So start from the left and move across to the right to make sure you don't miss any of the feeding zones. And that'll help you explore different depths and the areas efficiently.
Gotcha. And then what would be one more bonus tip that I love that. So retrievals, that's number one. Cover systematically, that's getting you there. What would be another one you'd throw in there?
Um, Pack the essentials.
Yeah, right,
Bring flies, tippet sizes, and leaders. Don't forget polarized sunglasses. That'll be a
right.
game changer for spot.
Yep. Is the leader, is that a big part of this? Is the leader varied? Are you changing your leaders up a lot when you're out there, depending on the flies you're using?
Sometimes it depends. Sometimes I'll lengthen the leader depending on, if it's really still. It's more the wind conditions is when I'll change the leader.
Yeah, okay. So if it's really blowing harder out there, you're just going to go shorter leaders?
Yes.
Okay. And what would be a good typical leader if somebody's out there again, they're that new person, they've got their woolly bugger on. What's your standard, like a leader length and kind of build?
Usually I do a 9-foot leader. If you're just going to do streamers or, if there's going to be some wind, so shorter leaders are easier to control. A good 10 to 12-foot leader is what I use. That's ideal for fishing chironomids under, if you're going to dangle them under a dry or something. So, or in clear water if they're going to be spooked.
Gotcha. So 10 to foot. And is that leader something where you're just grabbing it out of a pack, or are you building kind of this leader?
If you're a beginner, I would just get pre-built leader.
Yeah. Just get a 9 foot and add 3 feet of tippet on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Keep it simple. And then if it is windy out there, you can change it up. But like you said, that you got the dry line, the sinking line, and the or the intermediate and the type 3 or somewhere in that range. And then on the dry flies, how does that look when let's just take it to the drogue. If you're drifting down, you see some fish rising. You already probably know maybe what some hatches are going on. Is that something where while you're in the drogue, you're casting it using your dry fly rod and throwing it out there?
I mean, you can only have one rod rigged up at a time.
Oh, you can. Only one.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
So you'd be switching out your line to that.
Yep.
So you want to be strategic about the line that you're using.
Okay. So you pretty much, when that event goes, you're probably not switching your Stillwater rod too much, because if you do, you're missing a lot of water. Or do you occasionally switch up completely, like go from a nymph to a dry fly setup?
Yeah, so you have to be real strategic, starting high and then going low. So, if you are going to start with a floating line, you'll go floating and then you'll put your weighted fly on and start your depth before you switch your line.
Gotcha. Yeah, I see. Yeah, so again, back to that systematic. So you start, and you got to be on it. So you start, maybe, like you said, start high. Maybe you do start with a dry, but you start higher, and then if you're not getting anything, you've got your fly, you go a little bit deeper. Maybe that's a weighted fly. Then maybe you go to the intermediate. So that, and then down until you find them. And then once you find them, you're on. And then you also have in the competition, it's interesting because you have a person in the boat who you're competing against. Is there, how does that work? Because I would imagine you could just look and say, oh, they're using the type 3 airflow line, right? And that sort of thing. Is that kind of how it looks? Is it easy to see if they're doing, have you been in that situation where the person's just killing it out there, catching a lot of fish, and you're not catching anything? And you're like, oh, maybe I should switch to what they're using?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you have to pay attention to their line. Like, is it sinking? What are they doing?
Oh, right. Okay. So you are using them. You're basically kind of, we're fishing with them in a sort, even though you're competing against them.
You are. And then there's a lot of technique. You'll be in the boat and you're kind of chit-chatting with the person next to you, trying to distract them, but also not. So there really is a lot that goes along with it. But then you're also paying attention and, trying to see what they're using and hiding your flies at the same time.
Right. Wow, that's so interesting. And then do you get down, typically, I guess depending on the lake, you get down to the end of the lake and then you pull up your drogue, you motor back up to the top, and are you making multiple runs out there? How does that work when you're fishing on the comp?
Yes. Yep. And then you have to reset. So while you're moving, while the boat's in motion, nobody's fishing, just to be fair. And so you reset the boat and then you both start fishing again. And so each boat has to be, 50 yards from each other. And so while you're repositioning, if another boat sees that you're on fish and you're catching fish, they could sneak in there and hop in the line behind you. So then you have this assembly line of boats. You could get pushed out. And so then you have to find a new spot.
No kidding. Oh, so if you're getting the action, somebody can hop in line and then you get bumped out eventually out of that line.
Yeah, so there's a lot that goes on. You want to catch fish, but be very quiet about it. You and your boat partner.
Oh, right. There's stealth.
Yeah, there's a lot of strategy that goes into it. So I love lake fishing. There's a lot that goes into it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah, right. That is awesome. That competition is kind of interesting because, yeah, you definitely probably don't want a real loud reel out there, right? And lakes are quiet, especially if there's no wind. You can be on the other end and you know exactly what's going on. So how would you stay quiet? I guess that's it. If you're starting to get into them, you just kind of you're low key. You try to not let anybody know and just be as quiet as possible.
Oh yeah, you and your partner. You're both quiet. You kind of make like a secret handshake deal when you start. Hey,
Yeah,
gonna be 1 and 2. If we're gonna win this, this is the winning boat. And then you
right.
quietly just go through the whole motion.
Yeah. And then do you mix it up after that? So the session walk. So we haven't talked a lot about the Stillwater comp. So when you get done with that session, do you mix it up and then do all your teams go through and all your teammates fish that day, or how does that work on the Stillwater?
No, no. So each day, only one person fishes or one team fishes that day.
Oh, okay. So only one. So like you guys are starting on July 13th or in that range. So there'll be the first day will be one person, one team out there. The next day will be that a new person. So out of those five people you have, you got 5 days of fishing.
Correct.
Oh, I see. Okay. So, and you'll have, you said three still, or two Stillwater and three rivers. So you will be, do you know your lineups? Will you be probably at your Stillwater, right? You probably will be doing one of those Stillwater days.
Correct. Yeah, we don't have our lineups yet. We get those that week of the competition. But yeah, I believe it goes river, Stillwater, river, Stillwater. So
Okay. Do you have, does the women's team have a coach?
Norm McTima is our
Oh, Norm is. Yeah. Yeah, McDonald. Okay, yeah, we've had Norm on the podcast. He's actually it's one of our most listened to podcasts in the history of our show. We'll put a link out to that episode. Yeah, that was a great one. I can't remember to be honest with you. It was so long ago. I can't remember exactly what we covered. It was definitely some comp stuff, but cool. So yeah, you got Norm and like we said, obviously Chris. Having him there is big as well. So this has been good. Well, I think there's always so much to talk about. I kind of love that we chatted on kind of some high level, getting people started. That's always interesting, and then the lake stuff. Anything else you want to leave with on the competition or what you have going? We haven't talked much about your home waters. We've kind of focused here, but do you, when you're not doing comp, what's keeping you busy on the fly stuff? Are you guiding, doing any of that stuff, or is it mostly the competition?
no, it's mostly the competition. Like I mentioned, my husband's the president of the masters team, and
Yeah.
Blake Gunther, he was the president of the women's team. And I guess in December of this last year of 2024, he was looking for, or he stepped down and he became the director of fly. So he asked if I'd take over the team. So I became the president of the team, and I was a little intimidated, but I was honored on the opportunity to do that. So I became the president of the team. So I do a lot for the women's team. But also I was able to create a whole leadership team here for the women's team. So I know you've spoken to some of the other folks on the team, but um, we have most of our world's team that's competing are also the leaders, part of the leadership team on the women's team. So our team manager, Lindsay Sofrin, our team captain, Tess, our secretary, Julie Matson, all three of them are guides. Our vice president, Katie Fucher, she's a lifelong athlete. She was a golf pro. Kristen Allman, she's our communications director. So all of us, we
Wow.
all compete on the world's team as well. So we have a ton of talent, passion, and heart. So that's what I do. So I do a lot with bringing the team together and being able to expand the work.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, and I think you mentioned, I think Lindsay, Tess, Julie, I think we've had all of them on the podcast, and we haven't talked to Katie. We haven't had everybody yet, but I think we're doing a good job working on this through here. I feel like, occasionally we go back and talk about the 50/50, Orvis movement back in the day where I think, trying to get more women on the water. But how do you feel like, I feel like that's going pretty well. It seems like, especially now you have a 4 years of the women's team. Do you think overall we're doing pretty well at getting more women out there on the water?
Yes, yeah. I would say if you would have asked me, 4 years ago, 7 years ago, if this is what the team could have been and would have been, I don't know that I would have believed it. But yes, I would say
Yeah.
This is incredible. I wouldn't trade this journey for anything. The team is great. Our national team of 12 is, we're all coming together, and we have some good plans moving forward to be able to expand the team and to
Yep.
have some more events and clinics to let people know that
So cool.
exist. Yeah. So
And you got I think the gold medal still, right? You got that's probably, I'm sure, the goal. It feels like that you could, I mean, this could be the year, right? Do you feel like this could be the year that you could win the gold out here, whether individually or as a team?
oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
This is the year.
It is, right? It's on our home water. I think that's what's exciting about this, is that it's on the home water. So anybody listening now, if they've never been to a world championship, if they've never heard about it, they've probably heard about it, but never thought about it. I mean, that's what I think is exciting, that you could, like, anybody can go there and watch this, and it could be a gold medal sort of, thing. And so I'm pretty excited about it. I think this is going to be a great year. Hopefully we'll get some people out there and maybe get some volunteers, out there and helping out. But anything else you want to leave with Melissa before we get out of here that we missed today, or about the competition, or what you have going?
No, I think that's great. This has been wonderful, and I appreciate you, giving me the time. It's been wonderful.
Awesome. All right, well, we'll send everybody out, like we said, usangling.org, and that'll be the best place to connect. And also the Melissa Smith 82 on Instagram. They can connect with you there. And appreciate all your time, Melissa. This is going to be awesome. We'll definitely, hopefully, keep connecting with more of the Team USA members and all that. And until we talk again, thanks.
All right, thanks.
Quick call to action for you today. If you want to check out this and see the best in the world, we've got the youth team this year. We've got the women's team we talked about today. You can check it out right now, and this is going to be amazing this year. If you haven't checked in on this and you want to learn and volunteer and get involved, you can also do that. Check in with usangling.org and check in there. All right, if you haven't heard, we have something going on right now. It is called Wet Fly Swing Pro, and you can go to wetflyswing.com/join right now. Join. You can actually join Wet Fly Swing Pro, and we're going to have a special discount code for those that want to get involved in this. So if you're interested, send me an email, dave@wetflyswing.com. This is where we're all building trips together, building our best trips of the year. If you're interested in getting first access to upcoming trips, everything we have going, Wet Fly Swing Pro is the place to be. All right. Hope you enjoyed that one. Hope you enjoyed these episodes. We have more of these coming. We are going to definitely, as we work up to this event, it's going to be a great one. So please check in with me if you have any questions. And hope you enjoyed this episode of Travel Today. And I hope you can live that dream trip this year and get out and fish some of those amazing waters and experience that road less traveled.